Well, I guess it's been a while since I've done one of these. Rather gloomy day. It is rainy season here in Southeast Asia. And although it's much easier to contend with here in Pattaya than in Phuket, quite a difference. Phuket's just so close to the equator, 7 degrees north, that it's pretty awful. Anyway, so what I want to talk about, I saw a post or a tweet last night that got me to thinking, and it's about this sort of, he used the word critical mass. When you achieve that in society, things like what we call revolution, and big changes happen real quick, but it requires that critical mass. And I got to thinking, yeah, I feel that, and I'll get to that in a bit. But I was thinking, where can I think back to where I noticed it starting? And I noticed it starting in 1992, when the Soviet Union began collapsing, culminating in its official end in beginning of '93. I was a U.S. Navy officer. I left the Navy because I saw that this was going on, and I saw the ability to we got to find a new enemy. And the new enemy turned out to be, Islam, or, fundamentalist Islam, terrorism, blah, 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 blah. Now, but the thing about the fall of the Soviet Union, not the fall of communism, but the fall of the Soviet Union, is that it had to give the left, the elitist, the elites pause, because it was just assumed that communism is the way of the future, and we just slow march this thing. And there's this idea of nature over nurture. It's not how we are. There's a difference between ancient religions. Ancient religions looked at how we are, and for example, Christianity comes up with, let's come up with the idea of original sin. Man is depraved, and now we have a way to contend with that, which is a religious structure. So religions did not say, well, here's how we perfect man. It said, here's how he is. This is how God created him. So we have to contend with that to be good, so that there's good in the world, right? And that's why they persist to this day, because it's quite obvious that that works for people. It works for a lot of people all over the world, in every culture, in every society. There are formalized religions. You have to ask yourself why. Right? So, and the communism is somewhat of a religion, right? You're just putting your faith and trust in a state contrived of by men, rather than this fantasy notion of a God, which we have no access to directly. Right. So anyway, nature. So religions dealt with the nature of man, whereas communism dealt with this idea that we can use totalitarianism to nurture humanity into this sort of altruistic, self-sacrificial animal without incentives, that works and toils and tries to achieve for the sake of other men, not what they can get out of it and how they can advance. They don't recognize rule number one of man, in the nature of man. Rule number one in the nature of man. Listen to this carefully. Listen to this carefully. It's always been this way. It will always be this way, no matter what. We want to win. That's who we are. We want to win. It doesn't matter what the situation is. It doesn't matter personally, relationships, work, anything. You want to win. So, when you realize that, and realize that nothing ever can come close to undercutting that, or ever will, because if push comes to shove, man will still win. You know how they'll do it? By creating a lot of blood. They'll win that way. You can figure out what I'm talking about. That's part of where the critical mass is going. So the Soviet Union collapsed, and people thought, okay, well, communism, they didn't stop to think, well, because communism is bullshit, right? And it's never going to work. No, it's like, oh, it hasn't been tried the right way yet. So it marches on, and all the lefties and elitists took refuge in environmentalism, which used to be called global warming until that doesn't work out. So now everything is climate change, right? And because people are fucktarded enough to contend with goalpost moving like that, because everybody's fucking stupid. Unfortunately, that's coming to critical mass too. So anyway, you go on, and then next big event is about 8 years later, 7, 8, 9 years later. Yeah, 8 years. 9/11. Boom. To this day, I still remember my gut visceral reaction when the TV turned on just seconds before the second airplane hit the second tower. You know what my initial gut reaction was? Remembering, I'm a former Navy officer. I was in this sort of Cold War era for 8 years. I ate, lived, and slept it, and breathed it, at sea, playing war games with the Soviets. And then I saw what had to shift. We didn't need to create an enemy with the Soviets. Then when they collapsed, it seemed like we had to create an enemy. I didn't like that. I got out. So then I see, well, this is what happens. That's exactly what I thought. This is what happens. But then I did, like most other people did, and didn't stop to question, why is this happening, right? Is there something we could do differently where this kind of thing, where we could do differently, it wouldn't, it's not gonna take our lives away or our freedom away, but just something we could do differently, and we don't have to contend with this. Nope, it was, everybody's pissed off, and because it was quite an audacious act, and quite impactful, right? Changed the world forever. And for the while everybody was united, and everybody was united against the Islamic world. And in some measure, we introduced the white knight element. We're not necessarily going to give them democracy or everything. We're going to save their women. Look how they treat the women, right? So, advance however many more years, and what happens? People are getting tired of this forever war, and getting tired of a lot of other things. They're getting tired of the political correctness, the wokeness, all of this stuff sort of coming together. The critical mass is starting to form. And then you have, in I think 2015, or was it 14, I can't remember, but you have Brexit. Shocker. A shocker. Then the left is like, uh-oh, the elites are like, uh-oh, this is big. And then, but they're like, it's just an anomaly, and then they slow walk that thing for years, rather than say, okay, this is the will of the people, boom, 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 a deliberate process, but not something that takes years and years and years. They could have done this in months, said, okay, that's it. We could always rejoin if everybody doesn't like it, right? But we're gonna see to the will of the people, right? No, can't do that. Yeah, the Democrats can't affect democracy when they don't like it, right? So then, now the bigger shocker was Trump. A year later, a year or two later, it's like, what? They were so convinced that Hillary had it that they didn't put the fix in enough, right? That was evident by her reaction. Basically her reaction was, I thought you had this fixed, right? And then, everybody knows how endless get Trump, anybody but Trump. And unfortunately, that's when the Republicans began to be exposed for who they really are. So you go on and on this critical. Now, we've gone to the point where we don't know what a man is or a woman is. You can lop off the genitals of kids, give them drugs to prevent or delay nature's natural maturing through puberty. Like, that's not going to have long-term consequences. And medical doctors do this. Medical doctors, a surgeon, a trained surgeon, actually goes up to an operating table and cuts off the penis of a 16-year-old boy or cuts off the breasts of a 16-year-old woman, and society is like, yeah, it's gender-affirming care. So this is building, this critical mass is building. To what end, I'm not sure about, but something's going to give sooner, or probably later, but maybe sooner. That's how I put it. It's not going to be pretty. Now, see, one way to look at what's going on with all this, stuff. I mean, they have a hearing on censorship in the House of Representatives. A hearing on censorship, and one of those people invited or called to testify was Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is running for president of the United States on the Democrat ticket, a name with the most celebrated or famous name in American politics. The Kennedys, right? And what do the Democrats try to do at the censorship hearing? They try to censor him. They float a motion right off the beginning saying, no, we can't let him speak. We have to censor him at a censorship hearing. So ridiculous stuff like that, the gender stuff, the woke stuff, the transgender stuff, the just over the top stuff here, and then it's like what kind of world do we live in? Well, one way to look at it is last gasps, right? Last gasps, because what happens in a war when someone knows they are losing? It's a series of stuff that in retrospect and from a 30,000 foot view look ridiculous. It's like, but they'll try anything. They have to. So one way to look at it is what's going on with the left and everything now is that they have no choice. They have nothing. Like I always say, if they had good arguments for their positions, they would use them. They don't, right? So they throw all this ridiculous shit against the wall in an effort to see if something sticks. but I don't think it will. All right, that's it.